6 minutes. That was all the time left before 41 ships full of children and old people would meet a wall of silent spinning rock, and not one alien sensor on the fleet could see it coming. My name is Daniel Ashcroft, and I was standing on the bridge of the Cordial Accord when the alarm went off for real. 3 weeks earlier, nobody on this ship would have trusted me to carry a cup of coffee across the bridge without spilling it. I was the human, the only one on board. My name tag said intern in 6 different alien scripts, because the Confederacy could not agree on a single word for what I actually was. The first time they laughed at me, it was during a morning briefing. Commander Euthus Vell, a broad, heavy officer from a species built like walking stone, was explaining gravity limits for an upcoming mission. He looked past me and said that the Deathworlder would need to stay off any ship with strong gravity in case he fainted on the controls again. I had not fainted. I had bent down to fix my boot. But the whole room laughed, because it was early, and laughing at the new guy is easy. I said nothing. I just filed it away. The second time was at a formal dinner. A trade officer named Colothus, from a species with many shining eyes, turned to the alien beside her and said it must be frightening to live without night vision or the ability to smell danger in the air. She said it was strange that my species had lived long enough to invent a spoon. The table laughed again. I ate my food and stayed quiet. The third time was during a training drill. My direct officer, Lieutenant Braxa, pulled me off the emergency response list before the drill even started. She told the other officers that human reaction speed was almost 3 times slower than theirs, so I should just stand back and watch. She did not say it to be cruel. She said it the way you mention a small technical problem. Still, it stung more than the other 2 put together. I watched. I did not argue, but I remembered every word. Then came the real alarm. 11 days later. A convoy of 41 transport ships was moving refugees away from a border conflict. Mostly families, old people, children too young to understand why they had to leave their homes. Their route was supposed to be clear and quiet. It was not. A field of loose asteroids, cold and dark, with no engines and no power signal, had drifted directly into their path. Confederacy sensors were built to detect heat, energy, and engine trails. They were brilliant at tracking warships and shuttles. They were completely blind to plain rock with no power source at all. On the bridge, the calm control that alien officers were famous for cracked just slightly. Commander Euthus was shouting orders built for tracking an enemy ship. Orders that expected intention and pattern and threat calculations. But the rocks tumbling toward that convoy did not think. They did not calculate. They simply fell, the way rocks have always fallen, long before any of us built ships to fly between them. Braxa was running numbers on her console, her hands moving fast, but the ship told her plainly that the answer would take 4 more minutes than the convoy had left. I looked at the drifting shapes on the screen, really looked. Not like a scientist studying data, but the way you watch weather roll in, or the way you watch a stray dog pace before it suddenly runs into the street. I saw something nobody else on that bridge seemed to notice. 2 of the larger rocks, the 3rd and the 7th in the formation, were circling each other slightly, pulled together by their own weak gravity. They were about to touch, and when 2 spinning rocks touch in open space, they do not just stop. They kick sideways, hard and fast, and take the rest of the field with them. I said it out loud. I told them the 3rd and 7th rocks were about to collide, and when they did, the entire field would shift several degrees to the side. Nobody answered. There was no time to answer. So I used the emergency access I had been given only for filing paperwork, and I took direct control of the lead escort ship guiding the convoy. I turned it hard, threading it through a gap between 2 boulders that I had judged with my eyes, not with a screen full of numbers, because numbers were too slow for what was happening. The 3rd and 7th rocks touched. The whole field jerked to the side, exactly the way I said it would. And the convoy was already gone, clear, safe, moving away through the new gap before the rocks even finished shifting. For 1 long second, the bridge was completely silent. Then the comm channels across the entire fleet lit up at once. Every species, every ship, all talking over each other. My stomach dropped, because for a second I thought, here we go again. They are laughing at me one more time. But this laughter was different. Commander Euthys was playing back the sensor logs on an open channel, so every ship in the fleet could see what had happened. He was not mocking me. He sounded amazed, almost proud, like someone watching a magic trick they still could not explain. Braxa kept repeating the same words over her comm, half shocked and half delighted, saying that I had called a shift of several degrees in a field of tumbling rock, using nothing but my eyes, with no scanner, no calculation, just instinct. By the time I reached the mess hall, word had already spread through the entire ship. Colossus, the trade officer with the shining eyes, stood the moment I walked in. All of her eyes fixed on me at once. She said she believed she owed the Deathworlder a drink, and maybe an apology about spoons. I sat down across from her. This time, I did not smile just to be polite. I smiled because I meant it. Later that night, Commander Euthys found me near the observation window, looking out at the stars the way I used to look at the night sky back home. He said something I did not expect. He said that his species had never needed to develop quick instinct because their homeworld was calm, gentle, and predictable. Nothing tried to sneak up on them. Nothing hid in the dark waiting to strike. They built their whole way of thinking around patterns, because patterns were all they had ever needed. He asked me what my homeworld was like. I told him the truth. I told him that where I come from, the ground could shake without warning. Storms could form in minutes and destroy everything in their path. Predators moved in silence, testing weakness before showing themselves. Even the water could turn against you if you were not careful. Humans did not survive because we were the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we learned to notice small warning signs faster than almost anything else alive, and to act before we had time to be afraid. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said that explained a great deal. Braxa joined us a few minutes later, still going over the flight logs on a small screen, shaking her head slightly every time she reached the part where I turned the escort ship, using pure guesswork that turned out to be exactly right. She said she owed me an apology as well. She said she had judged my speed using numbers on a screen, without ever asking what those numbers were actually measuring. She said reaction time was not the same as understanding danger, and that she had confused the two. I told her it was fine. I told her I understood why they had thought that way. Their worlds had given them different lessons. Word of what happened reached the wider fleet within a day. Reports were filed. Officers who had never spoken to me before started stopping by, asking questions about human senses, human instinct, and how we managed to notice danger without the sensors they relied on. I did not enjoy the attention, not really. What I enjoyed was something quieter. For 3 weeks, I had been treated like a mistake the Confederacy had not figured out what to do with yet. Now, when I walked onto the bridge, officers who used to look past me started looking at me instead, like I was someone worth listening to. A few days later, Commander Euthys called me into a small meeting room, along with Braxa and 2 officers I did not recognize. He told me the fleet wanted to create a new position, something between scout and advisor, someone whose job was to notice the kind of threats their sensors were built to miss. He said they wanted me to help train other officers to think the way I had thought during the crisis, not to replace their instruments, but to add something their instruments could not offer. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. That night, I sat alone in my small quarters, looking at the same stars from a new position, no longer just a visitor allowed on board out of politeness, but someone the fleet actually needed. I thought about the 3 times they laughed at me. I did not feel angry about it anymore. I understood now that it was never really about cruelty. It was about not knowing. They came from worlds that had never demanded the kind of alertness my species carries every single day, passed down through thousands of years of narrow escapes and lucky guesses that were not really luck at all. The fleet was still laughing about what happened, but it was a different kind of laughter now. It was the sound of an entire fleet, realizing they had underestimated something they had never truly understood. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since coming aboard, I felt like I finally belonged there, not as an intern wearing a label nobody agreed on, but as someone who had earned his place among the stars.